Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this, we're going to be doing the top 5 current builds for Elden Ring. These are the top 5 builds that can absolutely crush all the bosses in the game. These are fantastic builds that can make the game a lot easier. You're definitely going to want to stick around for this one. Let's get into the details here. First up is a very obvious one in the Blasphemous Blade. Now, the Blasphemous Blade can heal you back with every single hit of its Ash of War, and it does a substantial amount of fire damage as well. It is one of the most reliable weapons in the entire game. Looking for easy mode, look no further because this is New Game Plus 7, by the way, and the Blasphemous Blade can scale well throughout all of the new game cycles, doing substantial amounts of damage to each boss, even when they're maxed out and they have a lot of HP. It's not going to matter if you're running the Blasphemous Blade and a solid build around it, especially if you're doing a couple of buffs, you're going to absolutely chew through boss HP with each hit of its Ash of War, which scales purely with your Fate stat and can be buffed like crazy too. It truly is one of the most reliable weapons in the sense that you're going to be able to take this for the majority of bosses unless they're fire resistant, and I mean greatly fire resistant like Mog and Rykard. Pretty much every other boss in the game is going to take a good amount of damage to this. Actually, a lot of the bosses have 0 fire resistance, including Melania and Radagon and Godfrey and Morgott as well, making it a very, very good choice to take on the game. You can see Malekith go down there without too much trouble. The Blasphemous Blade is truly an awesome faith weapon. Once you pick this weapon up and you have the adequate stats for it, you're going to have difficulty putting this one down. And now that we're back in Ashen Capital here, let's go over equipment for this build. Equipment, we have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10, any seal will do. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers on just in case we're doing jump attacks. We have the Fire Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, and then we have the Fire tier, and you can use something like the Faith or Defense tier. Let's get into stats. For stats, we've invested a lot into Faith. If you can use these exact stats, you're going to have a decent amount of posture. You'll have a good amount of damage from your Faith stat as well, since the Ash of War on this, the fire damage scales purely with your Faith stat. So you can see around 65 Faith, the amount of damage I was able to get, and using Golden Vow and Hellish Brewery as well. And next up here, speaking of Faith, we have the Lightning build. Yep, this is the Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike build. This can do a ton of damage. By the way, all these builds with additional info will be in the description below. I'm going to timestamp everything as well. And as we go after the Fire Giant in New Game Plus 7, you're going to see the immense damage we're able to do. This is also a personal favorite for me. I really do enjoy this build. The Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike build is something where once you get a hang of it, once you get positioning on some of the bosses, you can do massive damage with the Faith Nuke, essentially, that's equivalent to Comet Azura of magic builds. It is incredibly powerful, can be buffed like crazy, and larger targets especially are going to take a crazy amount of damage. You're just going to dish out ridiculous amounts of damage with this incantation. And as far as this build itself, again, it has a learning curve, but once you're past that learning curve, the amount of damage you get out of it is going to be worth it every time. Wait till you see the second phase here, what we're able to do to the Fire Giant. And this is with just using a couple basic buffs and a simple setup without low health proccing, no poison proccing, nothing crazy. The damage we're getting is still very, very good as we're able to completely destroy the Fire Giant on New Game Plus 7. Hellish Brewery goes really well with this build because it'll increase all of your damage. It has a generic damage buff of 25%. I mentioned that a lot in my videos. And after buffing, he'll go back here. If you're ever using this build, by the way, stand in front of him. Don't go behind him. Just cast it, fully charge it, and his second phase, most of the time, you'll be able to one-shot it with ease. All right, now that we showed off that awesome build, we're going to get into equipment for this one and the setup for Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. For this, we have the Gravelstone Seal plus 25. We have the Jellyfish Shield. We have a random set on. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Phlox Canvas Talisman. We have the Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman. Then you're going to want the Lightning tier. Definitely going to need that one. And then something like the Faith or Defense tier. Let's get into stats for this build. Now, as far as stats for this build goes, if you want to get to 80 Faith, you can pretty much maximize your damage that way. If you're not getting to 80 Faith, though, and you're going to spread your stats around a little bit at 150, you can actually use the Magma Blades because their Ash of War is a lot of Faith. You can use the Blasphemous Blade too, which Ash of War is all Faith, and kind of mix up the build and use a combination of overpowered builds with those identical stats. And next up is pretty much every bleed build and the Scavenger curved swords on highlight. Now, if you're using the Scavenger curved swords, I really like them at 125 and 150 because you only have to really invest in one stat in Arcane because you can put them on Occult. If you're using something else like the Bandit curved swords, you can go Dex and Arcane. If you're using the Beastman curved swords, you can use Strength and Arcane. Any of those is going to have the identical setup that we're going to show you here to absolutely crush bosses with jump attacks and bleed procs. And as you can see, Commander O'Neill here, or Commander O'Neill, sorry, I think I had the wrong one there. He takes a ridiculous amount of damage from the jump attacks, and he ends up getting several bleed procs, and that was very easy. Let's get into equipment for this one. So for equipment, we have 2 Scavenger curved swords plus 25. We have the Dragon Communion Seal, because it scales with Arcane, so why not? We have the White Mask, Raptor's Black Feathers, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Claw Talisman. We have the Green Turtle Talisman, but you can use Millicent's Prosthesis or Dragon Crest in that spot, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and then we have the Faith tier and the Thorny tier as well for that successive attack boost. Let's get into stats for this one. I was doing a couple different things with this build at the time, but generally speaking, if you can get to 80 Arcane if you're running the Scavenger curved swords. Again, if you're doing different stuff like the Bandit curved swords, obviously you can do Dex and Arcane then, but if you're going Scavengers, then you're going to go highly invested in Arcane, the minimum Dex requirement, and the rest is up to you. And the next powerful build on here is a really fun one and a personal favorite that goes back throughout the whole Dark Souls series. It is the Darkmoon Greatsword, a very powerful weapon in Elden Ring. Darkmoon Greatsword has a wonderful history. It's been going on since literally the game's King's Field since a long time ago. I believe that was in the 1990s, and it actually went through with the whole Dark Souls series. It has appeared in pretty much some variation in every sense of game that they have, and in Elden Ring, it's no exception to how great it usually is. The Darkmoon Greatsword is one of the most reliable weapons for a mage in the entire game, doing stance damage, frost damage, having a distance beam, and being one of the most FP friendly weapons in the entire game. It truly is a masterpiece of a weapon, and after we put the Godskin duo to sleep here, you're going to see the crazy amounts of damage that we're able to do. The damage on the Darkmoon Greatsword for the beams ends up being really substantial here as we take them on, and you can boost it with Terra Magica as well because it's pure magic damage, adding on to the amount of damage that you can do in general and making it, again, a highly buffable weapon with a crazy high damage cap. We're taking on the Godskin duo here, by the way. I just want to say real quick, if you're not subbed, now's the time to sub. Definitely be sure to sub to this channel. You'll be joining an awesome community full of Elden Ring content, Souls content that we're going to be doing in the future as well. And we're going to continue to make the game interesting, keep it interesting, have fun with the game, do a ridiculous amount of builds, and then when DLC comes around, we're going to hit that really hard too. Definitely be sure to hit that sub button. And as you see here, the Godskin Noble is going to be a little bit aggressive. The last sleeping pot that I had didn't really work out for me, but that's all right. We can handle him. We've got the distance beams. They do a lot of damage after all. You're not going to get a ton of frost build up on the distant part of it. If you are up close, you might be able to get the frost procs. It does a lot more that way. But as far as the distance beams themselves, you're going to get stance damage, pure magic damage, and again, you can boost it by things like Terra Magica and generically Golden Valhalla Shabriri. By the way, we ended up with the bug again here. The Godskin Noble came back after they were dead and ended up having to rest at the site of grace to avoid fighting him again. I don't know if they're going to patch this eventually, but yeah, basically if they try to spawn in their buddy at the same time that you kill them, there's a chance that they will come back with no health bar and their full regular health bar that they have individually, but you can rest at the site of grace to avoid the rest of the fight. Let's get into equipment here. For equipment, we have the Darkmoon Greatsword plus 10. That's what we're mainly using here. Any seal will do. We had a random set on. It's not going to boost this. It'll boost Magic Ashes of War, though. It's a Spellblade set. Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest, Shard of Alexander, Magic Scorpion Charm. And then we have the Magic tier. Then you can use the Faith tier. I'm going to explain stats after the next one. And that is Night Comet, one of the most powerful spells in the game. In my opinion, probably the best all-around build in the game, given the fact that if you want to buff it up even further, you can destroy bosses before they even get near you. And even with just basic buffs here, as you're going to see on the dragon, the amount of damage Night Comet does when it's charged is insane. Truly is an amazing spell, and it's something you're going to want to add to your toolkit. If you haven't used Night Comet yet, if you're having trouble with any boss, Night Comet is going to help you a ton. It helped me a ton for certain bosses in the game. You could shoot through their HP, and you can use it at a safe distance as well. Let's get new equipment for this one. For equipment, we have 2 Staves of Loss that'll boost it by 60% before buffs. They each boost by 30%, making it overpowered right from the get-go. If you don't have a second staff, the Jellyfish Shield is fine. We have the Graven Mask Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Godfrey Icon, Magic Scorpion Charm. Then we have the Magic tier, and then again, you would use something like the Faith tier. I'm going to show the stats on my mage for a level 200 character, and then show you what to do at level 150. My stats were all over the place, but if you're continuing to level up, my mage happens to be around level 200, you're just going to invest as much as you can into intelligence and try to get to 33 fates so you can do all of the amazing buffs that make these even better. And now for the 150 stats. For the 150 stats, if you want to pause this, you'd only be sacrificing 10 levels of intelligence. You can use the Darkmoon Greatsword build too, and you can use the Night Comet build. 60 intelligence is enough to get massive damage out of Night Comet. I hope you guys enjoyed this, by the way. This was the 5 top current builds for me to absolutely crush bosses in Elden Ring and make the game a lot easier in the process. This was definitely a fun one to do, to go and get these clips and everything, and to just basically destroy bosses with some of the most powerful builds in the entire game of Elden Ring. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. There's almost 500 people on there now. It's been a great community. If you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.